They never saw you coming. Not because you were hiding, but because they never bothered to look. You weren't loud enough. You weren't rich enough. You weren't someone. In a world that worships noise, you were just surviving. You were the afterthought in every room. It's a shadow in every crowd. The name they always forgot. But there's a kind of silence that grows teeth. And one day you stopped asking to be seen. You decided to become someone they couldn't ignore. Not for revenge, but because invisibility was no longer your home. This isn't a story about being born with power. It's about building it, piece by bloody piece. Watch this video till the end. If it makes your chest burn a little, subscribe and like. You belong here. There was no applause when you began. No spotlight, cheering crowd. Just you. And that feeling inside your chest that wouldn't die even when everything around. You tried to kill it. You weren't chosen. You weren't celebrated. You didn't walk into rooms and get noticed. You slipped through the cracks. You taught yourself how to live in silence, not because you liked it, because it was all you had. There's a kind of hunger that doesn't make noise. It doesn't post online. It doesn't look inspiring. It looks like skipped meals, broken sleep, and an invisible war inside your mind every single day. It's when you keep moving forward with nothing in your hands and no one behind you. This wasn't about proving anyone wrong. Back then, you didn't even have the luxury of thinking that far ahead. You weren't fighting for greatness. No. You were fighting to not disappear. You told yourself things in private that no one will ever understand. I'll figure it out. I'll make it through this. Even when you didn't believe it, you said it anyway. Because the alternative, giving up, felt like dying slowly. They didn't see the nights you wanted to scream into the floor. They didn't see the mornings you couldn't get up, but did anyway. They didn't see how many versions of yourself you had to kill just to survive another week. People love success stories. They love transformation. But no one claps for the becoming. No one shows up for the chapters where you're breaking apart quietly, where you're unsure. Under pressure, underfed in every way that matters. You carried a hunger that had no witnesses. And still, you carried it. You dragged your dreams. Through mud, through fear, through failure after failure. You buried your pride. You outgrew your excuses. You learned to be your own momentum. And when the world told you to stay small, stay quiet, stay realistic, you didn't scream back. You just built day after day, unseen, uncelebrated. You built yourself so when they finally look at you now, when they ask where it came from, you'll know it came from the fire they ignored, the desperation they mocked, the hunger they thought meant nothing. But that hunger was your blueprint, and now you're no longer asking to be seen. You've become someone who can't be ignored. Because the truth is, you didn't need their applause. You needed that hunger. And it turned you into everything they never expected. You thought something was wrong with you. That's how rejection feels at first, like proof. Proof that you're not enough, not smart enough, not talented enough, not worthy of being chosen. You looked at the closed doors, the unread messages, the silence, and you blamed yourself. They said no. They overlooked you. They picked someone else. And with every rejection, something inside you started to shrink. You didn't just lose opportunities, you started losing pieces of yourself. You wondered, maybe this just isn't for me. Maybe I'm not built for this. But you were wrong. Because rejection wasn't a curse. It was the training ground. It was the harsh, uninvited mentor that shaped you without your permission. Every time they laughed, you got quieter. But in that quiet, you started listening to your own voice. Every time they ignored you, you stopped chasing approval, started chasing growth. Every door that slammed in your face forced you to build one of your own. You just didn't know that. Yet, rejection doesn't break you. It strips you. It strips the parts of you that were dependent on being liked, being wanted, being accepted. And when there's nothing left to cling to, that's when you meet your power, not the polished version. The real one born from grit, not applause. They thought they were dismissing you, but they were pushing you inward. And what you found inside the fire, the fight, the defiance, none of that was gifted, was earned through pain. You were never meant to be chosen by them. You were meant to become undeniable, with or without their validation. And every no carved that into you like a scar. They didn't know they were sharpening your edge. That every time they underestimated you, they were helping you build something lethal, self-reliance. You stopped knocking on their doors, started building walls they could never climb. You didn't realize it at the time, but that rejection, the thing that once made you feel worthless, was actually saving you. Saving you from small visions, from fake support, from becoming someone who needed permission to rise. Now, you look back at those moments, you don't feel broken. You feel bulletproof, because the people who once ignored your existence, they unknowingly gave you the gift of not needing them. And that is the moment you stopped waiting for acceptance. It started becoming the storm they couldn't ignore. No one clapped when you didn't quit. No one noticed when you dragged yourself out of bed with nothing in your tank. No spotlight. No audience. Just you and a decision. Keep going. Not because you felt strong, but because stopping wasn't an option anymore. You weren't building anything flashy. There was no overnight success. No big reveal. You were just showing up again, and again, and again. On days when your hands were shaking. On nights when your heart felt numb. On mornings when the silence in your life screamed louder than any alarm. You weren't chasing greatness. You were clawing for inches. A little more control over your emotions. A little more discipline. A little less chaos than the day before. Those tiny wins. The kind no one else cared about. They saved your life. Because that's how real change happens. Not in the moment the world sees you, but in the 1,000 moments before, when no one's watching and you still show up. You didn't have the luxury of waiting for motivation. You trained yourself to move without it. You didn't wait for permission, for clarity, for some perfect plan. You just kept showing up in your own mess, learning how to stand taller inside it. And while everyone else was chasing a big break, you were building your own foundation, brick by brick, day by day. You kept your head down while others laughed, doubted, forgot, but you remembered. You remembered who you were becoming. More than that, you remembered why it mattered. Because consistency, when done in silence, is the most dangerous thing you can develop. It doesn't shout, it stacks. One decision at a time, 1 hour at a time, till one day you wake up, and you're not the same. They didn't see it. They only see the result now. They see the explosion, not the silent grind that lit the fuse. But you know, you remember every inch you had to fight for, every setback you had to outlast. A version of yourself you had to let go of just to keep moving forward. You built this. Not with luck, not with noise, but with ruthless consistency. And the kind of small, private wins that no one else cared about but you. And that was enough. There was a time when all you wanted was for someone to see you, to recognize how hard you were trying to tell you that you mattered, that your effort wasn't invisible. But they didn't. They looked right past you like you were just another face trying too hard to become something. So you tried harder, you gave more, said less. You bent yourself into versions you didn't even recognize just to feel seen. And still the silence, still the empty rooms. Still the feeling that no matter what you did, it would never be enough. It broke something in you, but not in the way they expected. It didn't make you bitter, it made you done. Done with chasing claps from hands that never clapped? Done with earning a seat at tables that never made space for you? Done with living like you needed anyone's permission to rise. You got quiet, but not defeated. You didn't disappear, you just shifted. From chasing validation to building something they'd eventually have to notice. Not because you needed it anymore, but because that was never the point. And that's when it happened. That's when the same people who ignored you started watching, started clapping, started saying things like, "I always knew you had it." But by then, you didn't need their praise. It didn't hit the same because you weren't doing it for them anymore. You stopped looking for applause and started trusting your own fire. You stopped needing noise to feel real. You stopped performing, and you started becoming. Now they see you. But it's too late for their approval to mean anything, because you built this version of yourself in silence, without their help, without their permission, without their echo. And what you built It can't be touched by claps or ignored by silence. It exists beyond recognition because it was never about being noticed. It was about becoming undeniable. And you did that. It's not when they started watching, but when you stopped caring if they ever would. There was a time when you thought power meant noise. The louder you spoke, the more they'd hear you. The bigger the moves, the more they'd respect you. You measured your worth by how many eyes were on you, how much space you could take up. But all that effort, it never felt real, because deep down you were still unsure, still trying to prove something, still hoping they'd see value in what you were barely holding together. And then came the shift. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't some lightning bolt moment of confidence. It was slow, quiet, and you started building your identity from the inside out, not for applause, not for recognition, but because you were tired of chasing illusions, tired of collapsing every time the world didn't clap. You started choosing silence over noise, discipline over drama, substance over appearance, and it changed everything. Because real power doesn't scream. It doesn't beg to be noticed. Walks in, steady, certain, rooted, and the whole room shifts. It's not because it demanded attention, but because it didn't need it. You stopped trying to impress. You stopped performing. And in that stillness, you found something dangerous. Clarity. The kind of clarity that doesn't ask who you are, it knows. The kind that doesn't rise and fall with people's opinions. The kind that doesn't flinch. You didn't become powerful by accident. You built this. Brick by brutal brick, through rejection, through doubt. Through every quiet moment when you kept showing up with no one watching. Now, when you walk into a room, you don't hope to be seen. You expect to be felt. Because what you carry now, it's not loud, but it's undeniable. Power isn't in your volume, it's in your presence. It's in the way you hold yourself when everything's on fire and you don't blink. It's in the way you know who you are, not because they said it, but because you decided it. You don't move for approval anymore. Move with intention. And that's what makes you dangerous. The world used to look right through you. Now it looks to you. Not because you made noise, but because you made yourself unshakable. They see what you've become, but they'll never understand what it took to get here. You walk into rooms now, and the air shifts. People notice, some admire, some envy, some stay quiet. But what they don't see, what they'll never ask, is the bill you paid for that presence. Because this version of you, it wasn't born in light. It was carved out in darkness. You gave up comfort. You gave up softness. You gave up being understood by people who only loved the weaker version of you. You sacrificed weekends, friendships, and sometimes even your own peace, all for the sake of something they couldn't see. Self-respect, clarity, control. No one clapped for you when you chose discipline over distraction. No one stood beside you when you buried your old habits and watched pieces of yourself die. People just said, "You've changed." And you had to swallow the truth that yes, you had changed. Because staying the same would have killed you. You stopped asking for validation. You stopped shrinking so others could feel comfortable. You stopped being the emotional dumping ground, the backup plan, the nice version of yourself that made everyone feel better while you drowned silently. You learned to sit alone. Not because you hated people, but because you refused to beg to be seen. Refused to be the one always explaining your worth, hoping someone would finally say, "You matter." Well, you walked away from the need to be understood and walked straight into the fire of becoming, and it burned. God, it burned. There were nights your chest felt too heavy to breathe. There were days you questioned if this path was even worth it, if all this silence, all this isolation was leading anywhere. But somewhere in the middle of all that, you found something they'll never take from you, yourself. You found that unshakable part of you. The one that doesn't need noise to be powerful. The one that doesn't need permission to exist. The one that walks in and doesn't hope to be liked, only to be true. And now they look at you differently. They ask how you got here. What? Your secret is why you seem so calm, so grounded, so sure. But you know the answer. It wasn't a secret. It was sacrifice. You gave up the version of yourself who begged to be chosen. You buried the identity that fed on crumbs of attention. And in return, you became too expensive to ignore. Not because of money, not because of looks, but because you earned every ounce of your power. And now, your presence doesn't ask to be seen, it demands it. That's the price. And you paid it in full. You feel it, don't you? That tightness in your chest. It's that silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like pressure. Like the world just paused. But not to give you rest. To see if you'd break, you look around and everything seems to be moving forward without you. People are building, laughing, arriving. And you're stuck at this invisible checkpoint, wondering if this is where it all stops. If maybe, just maybe, this was your limit. But let me say something that nobody ever told you. This isn't your ending. It's a signal. A violent, loud, soul-level shift that says you've outgrown your old life. And what's coming next needs a different version of you. See? You didn't claw your way out of that pit just to crawl back in. You didn't bleed through nights nobody saw, just to fold when it's finally quiet. This silence, you feel right. Now it's not death. It's transition. You became something people didn't expect. A reminder that evolution is real. That someone like you, forgotten, underestimated, tossed aside, could actually build. Not just survive, but construct a legacy out of pain, a foundation out of rejection. You're not here because of luck. You're here because you refuse to stay where they left you. Every room you walk into now, you carry the weight of everything you endured, and it shows. And that makes people nervous, because your very existence is offensive to systems that only celebrate the already chosen. To people who thought power came from status, not rebirth, you were never meant to fit in. You were meant to interrupt. 2. Walk in with scars and call out the lies that kept others small. So yeah, it hurts right now. But pain doesn't always mean the story is over. Sometimes it's just the last stretch before the chapter turns. You don't feel like yourself. That version of you expired. This pressure isn't breaking you, it's remaking you. You thought this was the end, but it's not. It's life testing whether you're done being who you were or ready. To become who you really are, you've already done the impossible. You rose from where no one thought you could. Now this moment, this hard, silent, suffocating moment, is proof that you're about to do it again. So no, this isn't where it stops. This is the signal. You're not finished. You're just starting to become something even they can't ignore.